Welcome to the Race Justice Equity Series webinar. Today's conversation is with Black men in education, as education leaders, schools, and school founders. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. I'm excited to be here today to have this conversation. We have a distinguished panel with us today. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping first. We are going to start this event as a webinar with our panelists. We will then switch to a meeting where everyone will come in and be able to speak, ask questions, engage in the conversation. We ask that you put your questions in the chat. So as you hear something, as you want to ask a question, put it in the chat, and we'll begin to address those questions along the way and during the discussion. We will have a special guest today. We're expecting Assemblyman Khaleel Anderson of the 31st Assembly District to provide us greetings today and speak to us for a moment. As we wait for him to arrive, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And I'll start with the introduction of folks, but I'm just gonna tell you their names and then we'll move back and we're gonna open up discussion where they're gonna take over, I'll say. But I wanna talk about what we're doing here today. And really, I'm gonna start with the narrative that exists. And there's a narrative about Black males in education. And the predominant narrative goes something like Black boys face social challenges, right? Particularly poverty, fractured families, a dearth of positive role models. Educating Black boys is exceptionally challenged, and only the lucky, the strong, and the disciplined make it through. The more likely path for these boys, the narrative goes, is that they're destined to a life or path. It includes illegal drugs, guns, prisons, and or lives cut short by violence. And I want to just add that, or challenge folks, that if that monolithic narrative is stamped into the psyche of mainstream America and popular culture, what does the educational landscape look like for them, right? How much of that narrative does society project onto them? Right? We project onto each other, essentially. What is the impact for boys in society, if that's the case, right? Conversely, there's not a general narrative, or at least one that I'm aware of, for Black male educators except this narrative. Black men as educators are the unicorns. They are the mythical figures that do not really exist, right? They're not available, not interested in careers in education, and we need them in the classroom desperately. Together, these narratives tend to negate the promise or can negate the promise and the potential of Black boys as fully capable and thriving students and grown men. And it largely overlooks, right? Together, they largely overlook the Black men who are educators, who are school leaders, who are school founders. Some of the questions we'll explore today are those concepts, but as well, how do we dismantle these narratives? How do we sort fact from fiction, right? Identify opportunities before challenges, find tools to address challenges and inequities, and count amplitude before deficits. And just like every other race justice equity series conversation, we ask, how do we fight racial injustice and inequity? And today we'll do that. Let's talk about with Black men about Black males in education. So with that, I want to welcome our distinguished panelists today. We'll start with, we know we have Ray Ankrum, Superintendent, Riverhead Charter School, and right, one pair of the 8 of the 8 Black hands. Very excited to have you today. Brother Rafiq, co-founder and managing partner, Ember Charter School for Mindful Education. Welcome, sir. Good to see you again as well. Dr. Christopher Manning, founder and executive director, Buffalo Creek Academy Charter School. Welcome. Walter Larkin, Jr., CEO of University Preparatory Charter School for Young Men. Dr. Paul Miller, CEO, Principal, Green Tech Charter High School. And I will just say, not unicorns, folks. They actually exist. And welcome, sir. We are very, very privileged to have you here today. So I was excited for this conversation. So we're going to get right to it. I'm going to ask each of you, please, to introduce yourselves, tell us about your work and your schools. We'll start just just in the order of who I see on my screen, we'll start with Dr. Paul Miller. We'll go to Dr. Christopher Manning, Walter Larkin, Ray Ankrum, and Brother Rafiq. Thank you, welcome all, and I'm going to get out of the way and let you get to it.
Well, thank you, Yomika. I appreciate being here. My name is Dr. Paul Miller. I'm the CEO and principal at Green Tech High Charter School. I have been here for almost 10 years now. We actually got a full 5-year unconditional renewal yesterday through SUNY. So big up to the team. It's a phenomenal teamwork and effort that goes on around here. In regards to myself, I've been here for about 10 years. Initially from Rochester, New York, born and raised there, just knew that I had to do something different to get out of the circumstances that I was in, and education was my guide. And so it always has been and always will be. And my goal is to give back to specifically young men who look like me. I am here over Green Tech, which is an all-boys school in Albany, New York. We're composed of about 97% African-American males in over 90% poverty, yet we average about a 95% graduation rate, 100% acceptance to college, and upwards of 15 million in scholarship money every year. And so those are our averages. And so when I say that, it's not without the hard work of our team and all the good people, and you're really combining with the community. And I just, again, can't thank the people that I work with enough.
Yomika, would you like me to go or do
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Manning.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Good to see all the brothers here. I'm Dr. Chris Manning, founder and CEO of Buffalo Creek Academy. We're a brand new charter school here. We opened actually in 2020. So we're the only school in the state that opened during the pandemic, freestanding charter school that is. We serve 70 families and we have a focus on community engagement and civic engagement. So you see us out in the community. Community first is our main mission. I'm originally from California. What brought me to Buffalo? I came to Buffalo from overseas. I served in the military. After I left the military, I went to work in international education, went and led and opened schools in what's called the quote unquote developing world. I did my dissertation studying barriers to education when it comes to poverty. And, you know, then just uncovered that the same situation sometimes occurs in the United States as does in developing countries. And as you know, so when I returned home, I wanted to do the same work I was doing overseas. So I came to open a charter school. So here I am, and this is what we're doing here in Buffalo.
All right, great, thank you. We'll move to the next.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Walter Larkin. First, I'm just proud to be on this panel with all these great men of substance. I have to say that it's just a blessing to be here. I'm the proud leader of University Preparatory Charter School for Young Men in Rochester, New York. This is my third year as the CEO there. Prior to that, I served 20 years in the Rochester City School District. What made me want to move over to the charter world is because it gives you the ability to put things in place to support our young men. In my school services, young men of color from 7th through 12th grade. And like Dr. Miller, we boast a 90% graduation rate of our young men within the city of Rochester. And I think some of the things that we do different is that we try to, we intentionally put people in front of our young men that look like them and come from where they come from. So I'm happy about that. Just excited to be on this panel because oftentimes, you know, they try to push us in the realm of deans or discipline, you know, athletics as opposed to instructional leaders. So I'm very happy to be on this panel today.
Sweet. Ray Ankrum, superintendent at Riverhead Charter School. So our school started off as a K-5, wrote a charter in order for it to go to K-8, and now we're K-12. We're going through our renewal year this year, so hopefully we have just as much luck as Green Tech. I'm sure we wouldn't have a problem. So our school is 85% Black and brown, with a uptick in Latinx population, and so we're seeing some things happen on Long Island to where we have to accommodate those students and make those shifts in terms of putting people in place that look like them in order for them to get the best educational opportunities that they can get. I'm 1/4 of the 8 Black Hands podcast. Pretty sure you guys are aware of that podcast. But most importantly for today, I'm a fan of everybody that's on this webinar. And so I'm just taking things in and learning today. I'm in learning mode today. So thank you so much, Yomika, for having me.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings, everyone. My name is Brother Rafiq. I am the founder and managing partner of we certainly serve, very similar demographics to what you heard from our brothers so far. I think I just want to kind of highlight and focus on kind of our goal to really shift this endeavor that we call schooling. We think it is completely wrong-headed. And that if we could start over again, we would instead try to answer the question, how do we prepare our younger brothers and sisters for adulthood in this society and in this world that is going to challenge them, that is is going to attempt to oppress them and mislead them. And so we begin with that at the core, and we try to build and do everything that we can to affect an outcome where we are helping to nurture and empower this next generation to be free and to be liberated. And to be free and to be liberated means that one is awake and aware, one is knowledgeable, one has an economic analysis and a love for themselves and their people. And so everything that we do, everything that we endeavor to do is to achieve that end and that outcome. So, we use whatever strategies that are available, whether it's neuroscience, whether it's an Afrocentric approach, whether it's a culturally responsive pedagogy, whether it's mindfulness, we endeavor to do everything that we can to help empower our young people who unfortunately are born into this world, as many of us have been, enslaved, to liberate themselves and to empower themselves, and then to emerge as people who are agents of change and catalysts of change to help liberate and empower others. So that's what we're about. And I know all of these brothers are certainly about that work. And so I'm excited to have this conversation today.
All right, thank you all. Like we already had the TED Talk. We can go now, right? You're already starting off with fire. Okay, all right. We're going to take a moment now to welcome the Assembly Member for the 31st District in Queens, Assembly Member Khaleel M. Anderson. Very delighted to have the Assemblyman on today to give a few remarks. We'll give him a second to come back onto the Zoom and hear from him. Welcome, Assemblyman.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I heard a brief pause, so I wasn't sure if I should jump in or not. Yeah. Thank you all for having me here in this space today. Blessings and greetings. As you can imagine, I'm jumping between Zooms because we're trying to negotiate this state's budget. We got a month to go. So I'm super excited in my new role. And I want to share with you guys briefly about my experience in the public education system and how it got me to where I am today. And what we need to do for our Black young men and women to help them have spaces of solitude, help them have spaces of confidence, help them have spaces of safety. From 5 years old, from kindergarten, I was diagnosed with ADHD and emotional disturbance. And that landed me to be in the special education system, going through the District 75 system and fighting for basic things that were supposed to be followed through my individual education plan. And what that means, one-on-one instruction, that means additional help with math or reading and things of that nature, things that I initially struggled with in my early years. But it also meant emotional support. And a lot of those supports that we get in the space of special education are things that we should have in general. I think every student should have access to mental health supports and resources in their schools. I think every student should have the opportunity for one-on-one instruction. I think every student should have the opportunity to have tutoring services for them, particularly in the STEM area subjects where there's a lot of struggle that happens. But the reality is that our system is so grossly underfunded that it leaves Black male students, it leaves Black women students behind. And it forgets that there's a segment of students that need additional academic and emotional support. And if I hadn't had those supports, I absolutely would not be here today as a member of the Assembly or as a community organizer and activist in my neighborhood. So I just have to mention that as well. The next thing I want to mention is what that journey was for me, right? So like growing up, single parent household, my mom raising me, I had a lot of misdirected anger as a young man, just trying to figure out myself, figure out the areas that I wanted to focus on, and figure out what that outlet is, what that outlet and tool for self-expression was. And so I found myself acting out. I found myself fighting teachers, getting into fights, and really expressing my anger in a way that wasn't conducive or productive to what I was trying to get done. And that's the story of a lot of our young Black men in our schools, not just in the public school system, but all across our education system. And a lot of the times they slip through the cracks because there's not that emotional support system to be able to save them and capture them. They're not getting it at home, then they'll most likely get it from the streets. And getting it from the streets is not always the best space to get emotional support, because it also leads into coercion and the things that, that folks know that path. And I easily could have went down that path. And so I think what really strengthened my ability and my resolve and the context that I needed to kind of express myself and find that outlet was supportive paraprofessionals, supportive teachers, and the fact that not in every space, but in most spaces that I was in, I had teachers, but mostly paraprofessionals and mental health specialists that look like me, right? That could relate to me, that can relate to my struggle. And I think that that's critically important for our kids, is that we got to see ourselves in some of these professionals. It can't be a white teacher from Long Island or Texas trying to teach our young people math and not understanding that student might not have had anything to eat this morning, or that student might be coming here and acting out because they have a broken home. And so a lot of the times folks don't understand that teachers, paraprofessionals, faculty in our school buildings become our second families because we don't have that support system at home. So I think that was one critical thing that helped me make it the District 75 special education system, is because I had that support system in the building. And I had paraprofessionals and teachers and faculty that looked like me and encouraged me, even when I was acting out, and encouraged me to do better and look at other channels. So, sorry, I'm on a hearing. So that's a critical point. But I do want to say that it was age 13 and 12 when hold on, let me just turn this down. Give me 1 second. Sorry. On a health committee hearing. Sorry. Okay, muted that. But I think that was critically important for me to move forward. And so when I turned age 12 and 13, began getting involved in the school community as well as my home community, and using activism and organizing and being angry and frustrated at the issues that perpetuate our poverty, our struggle, and our lack of resources. And I'm angry at those systems rather than the teacher. I'm frustrated at, that disparity versus the individual person and things of that nature. So I think that helped me, and the paraprofessionals, folks around me, helped me kind of find my voice in activism and find myself in this space. And so I think that those are the struggles, those are the struggles and stories that our young people need to hear. Those are the struggles and stories that our young people need to aspire to live through, so that they can find that channel, find that space where they could be able to voice their concerns. And I've been in activism and organizing ever since. Being an elected official now led me, because of the successful wins we've had in the community, because putting my energy behind urban farming, putting my energy around ending gun violence, putting my energy around investing in our schools. Those are the things I was now angry about, because the systems that have failed us and allowed my peers to fall into those cracks and ditches, if you will. Those are the things that I'm angry at now. That's what I'm channeling my anger and energy to. And so even at the hearing I was at today, when I spoke, I'm still listening in on it, I was angry at the commissioner, because the issue of health disparities is continuing to perpetuate, and it's been one of the leading causes of why COVID-19 was so pervasive in our communities. Those are the things that I'm angry about now, rather than the individual. And I think that as a young person growing up with many social circumstances, yes, this is your social circumstances, but it's how you come out of it and how you channel the energy from those moments into something positive. It's what's going to define you, your character, your personality, and if you make it or And I think as educators, which many of you all are on this call, and I think as people who are interacting with students, you got to understand their backgrounds, but also understand that our duty and responsibility is to create these channels for them, whether it's through sports, whether it's through activism, whether it's through joining a club, whether it's through an issue. It could be a single issue. One of the things that got me started when I founded a youth group, or was among the founding members of a youth group, that we started doing is we went out every other Saturday and we went and we cleaned up the block, because we were so frustrated at the city and at the different agencies that had failed us to allow our communities to be in the conditions that they were in. I live in Far Rockaway and grew up here in Far Rockaway. I was born in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and lived there for the first 9 years of my life. And then I moved to Rockaway when I was just 9.5. And so like just seeing that and feeling empowered enough to just pick up a shovel, pick up a broom, or anything like that. Those are the type of outlets and channels we want to give our students. And we want to show them, folks, we want to show them that this is the right thing to do. This is the way to go to express. I know you're frustrated. I know you're hurting that your father's not at home. I know your circumstances are tough, but there's a way to better express that. And it's through these different channels. So I'm just thankful for the brothers and sisters here today who invited me from the New York Charter School group here today. And I'm happy and excited to be able to speak and provide my story and expertise on lived experience, not expertise, lived experience on this space. And I'm happy to turn the mic back over, and I'm just thankful that you all allowed me a couple minutes to share my story and to hopefully inspire other young people to find their voice through activism, to find their voice through any and everything that they do that's positive.
Right. Assemblyman, thank you very much for all of that, for sharing your lived experiences, for taking out time between hearings and 2 Zoom calls to do this. That shows your dedication to this topic. We truly appreciate that.
Young people, I gotta say, sister, and I'm sorry to, young people are my passion.
All right.
Young people propelled me to office, and I always make a minute whenever I can to share my expertise and my voice. Excuse me, lived experience, not expertise, lived experience.
That's all right. And what I want to say too is that consider on behalf of folks here today in this charter community as well, that if we support those efforts, we support, what you're calling for, what supporting the changes that you seek based on your lived experiences. Consider us allies, consider us resources. Do not hesitate to reach out. I'm sure to the schools in your district, to the distinguished gentleman on the Zoom call today, and certainly myself. Thank you very much. And I just want to say to everyone here, just to take a short break, as I'm saying, everyone here, Ashara Baker is with us too. She's our community engagement manager in Rochester, New York, doing yeoman's work, as well as the leader of the New York Charter Parent Council. We engage. We welcome you here today, and thank you again for taking your time, and we will certainly follow up and try to keep the connection and lines of communication open with you, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for the critically important work that you all do in raising our next generation of leaders and organizers. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so powerful. I think we're just going to jump in and sort of pick up on some of those lines there. And in my opening, right, I talked about the narrative of Black boys. So I want to pose a question that really has a couple of parts here. First of all, what your thoughts on that narrative? And then what would you want to see sort of in terms of systems or things that change to either to dismantle that narrative or support, the changes needed to correct the narrative, address the narrative. So we'll start there, and then I'll ask you about how you would rewrite your own narratives. Go, yeah, I see you, Ray. Yes.
I'll jump in. I'll reflect on that. It was very powerful from the assemblyman. First and foremost, I want to say that politicians talk too much and they talk for too long.
Oh, please.
but his message was super powerful in that he talked about his fight with District 75.
That's right.
and just thinking about District 75 and some of the things that happen in special education, and how we can make just special education better for all students, and how we can use the things that we do with special education students to kind of, be under the same umbrella as general education students. So for me, I'm thinking that a one-on-one plan is imperative for all students because all students learn differently. And so if we're approaching the work in the sense that, all right, we're going to look at things that maybe your areas of strength and things that are going to be your areas of weakness, and we're going to focus on getting you the necessary help in order to address your areas of weakness, then all kids can have an IEP and all kids can be great. But first and foremost, we got to go into it with the approach of all of our kids can learn and all of our kids are amazing. And I don't think that, a lot of folks that are in education that are teaching our kids feel that way.
That's powerful. That's real. Before I just have a follow-up question, anybody else want to weigh in and respond? And the assembly member, I think, did have some powerful ideas. Ray, I love the idea and perspective that you and the assemblyman right, everybody could use a one-on-one. Like there are things to learn about best practices that we tend to compartmentalize and identify a group as needing that and no one else. And that's the only group that can benefit. So that's a powerful point. Does anybody else want to jump in?
Well, it's been my experience that a lot of students with disabilities were classified incorrectly. They were put in young men, they were classifying them because of behavior, not because of their instruction or their academic ability. So we had to get past a lot of that. It was like Brother Raymond said, is everybody learns differently. So if a young man was acting out, the first thing everybody wants to do is say they're the student with disabilities and throw them and remove them from their general setting. And I think we have to get past that and really look at the individual student and find out what works best for them. And we noticed, working with our young men of color, they all learn differently. They all come from different backgrounds. And it's also a go-to instruction. What are we presenting? What are we putting in front of them to keep them engaged? A lot of times the kids were acting out because they were bored out their minds or because the people we had in front of them wasn't engaging to them.
All right, so wait, so are we gonna do kid gloves with this, or are we really gonna talk about it?
Come on, Ray, come on.
Well, because if we really gonna talk about it, I mean, it ain't everybody that feels like our kids are on a route to special education. It's the majority of the population of the teachers that push them and push that narrative. It's not us.
Yeah, I think, listen, Brother Ray is absolutely right. I find it fascinating that if you walked into any private school with a mostly white population, you would see the same behaviors that are otherwise mapped and analyzed as disruptive and as and antisocial and violent. Same behaviors, right? I got this brother, Travian Shorters, out of Florida. He runs an organization called Be Me, and he really kind of one of the pioneers of what he calls asset framing. And it's essentially, I mean, I think what we're talking about here, and this is what I think Brother Ray is really suggesting. Look, fundamentally, if we just look at these behaviors that we otherwise want to classify as kind of requiring kind of special education, really, it's about how we are responding to our sensory environment based on whether our trauma, based on our history, or just based on our idiosyncrasies. And so fundamentally, how practitioners view these behaviors and whether or not they attach humanity to these behaviors is the difference. And so, let's just to be real about it. Like the reason that so many of our students are classified this way is because people bring a very racist lens that dehumanizes our boys and our girls, and then use them through that lens in everything that they do. Literally, if their pigmentation was different, if they were in a school where their parents made all of this money, these same behaviors would be seen as creative, outspoken, etc. So yeah, let's just keep it 100.
That's right. Let's always keep it 100. I thank you. I appreciate you of those comments. I want to give Dr. Miller, Dr. Manning, an opportunity to jump in on this if you'd like.
Yeah, oftentimes when you see, we talk about classifying children the wrong way, and a lot of it has to do with adults trying to create the environment to make themselves comfortable. And their discomfort in many cases is caused by a lack of cultural competence and the like, right? So, I mean, I deal with the same thing when, working in other parts of the world and dealing with quote unquote Western teachers and trying to help them break through that, that Western mindset and say, you're in this country, but to what the brother already said, where he said, kids are the same. I've worked all over the planet. Kids are the same. You're going to see the same, behaviors. But when you got adults that come from a totally different background, they have to be conditioned because they will try to create the environment to make themselves comfortable. So their biases and their fears manifest itself in policy. So you have children treated like they've done something wrong when they're just naturally being themselves, but the adult's not comfortable with it because they're unfamiliar with the culture, right? And the same thing plays out in America all the time. You have someone who, even though we're born in the same country, grew up in a totally different world in a way, steps into a world when you have a classroom full of predominantly Black children and don't understand the culture, don't understand the behaviors, and you take things the wrong way, right? Get a group of Black boys who are teenagers at a table and listen to their conversation. Okay, it gets loud and you get nervous. Well, have you ever watched ESPN and see the brothers talking? Their voices might raise, but there's not violence. That's just excitement, right? But if you're not exposed to the culture, you might not know what you're seeing. Or what if someone got upset? A 13-year-old got upset. All right, calm down, sit down. All right, that's a 13-year-old boy. But if you're terrified of him, that's going to manifest itself into violence, right? So I think it has a lot to do with the adults trying to create their own environment instead of trying to really learn the culture. That's really what I think.
Due to the systems, and the systems were never designed for people who look like us. So the systems have always been, there's always been weights. There's always been sandbags that have been placed on us running this, supposed to be the same races, but it's never been an even starting line. And so because those starting lines aren't even, because the lift that we have to carry throughout that race is different, we have to start to handle things different. So even as educational leaders, we have to start to train our folks, because now here in New York State, and especially more upstate, because I know it's upstate and then the real New York, as some of you brothers might think in on this group here, right? So as New York State in a whole, the majority of teachers who are out there, at least in the areas, especially in the areas where I'm, are white females. And it's not by design.
That's true in Brooklyn too, brother. That's true in Brooklyn.
It's not that, and so I have a desire to put people who look like our kids in front of them, but often those candidates may not be the ones that come looking for employment, even though we're looking for candidates who might look like us. And when I say all that, the goal then now is to educate those candidates and teach them as educational leaders. Let's teach them how to teach our young men. Let's teach them, let's put the systems into place. Like, for example, all my teachers, they have to go through white privilege training. They have to go through educating to the urban child. They have to go through learning the different systems and other things. But this is part of what they have to do to even work here, and put it in your processes to make sure that you start to level some of the playing fields. And that's one of the things that definitely needs to happen. Then the next piece is, and I can't let our brothers off the hook. I can't let our kids off the hook and say that some of it, there's definitely racist systems involved. There's definitely intolerance, injustice. There's all kinds of things that are just unfortunate, right? However, the behavior of at our times, the behavior of our students does need to change. They need to value education. So we need to help them and continue. I'm not saying that they don't. We have so many good students. We have amazing students, but we also have the students who, with the antithesis perspective of where they're not valuing. And our job is also to teach them the value of the education and teach our students and have them turn those perspectives around, because it's their job to continue to advocate for themselves. So, you are the keeper of your destiny and keeper of healing yourself. And so it's the point of us teaching them how to heal and heal through the journey of education in school.
Thank you for that, Dr. Miller. I want to ask the group then, just riffing on that other, and I see you, Ray. I want to say this first, to riff on that idea of what else, right? What are the tools? If that's, Dr. Miller, you brought up some great tools. Folks are on this webinar now. They'll see it later in recordings, right? What can school leaders do? What can principals do? Parents, etc. If you have that kind of advice information, what you're doing in your schools is likely relevant, powerful, effective. Please share, please share, please share. And Ray, I'll pass back the mic.
All right, thank you. So what I want to say is this: when you have students that are acting out, they're acting out for a reason. They're acting out because they're looking for some sort of attention, right? It could be good attention, it could be bad attention, but the number one factor is that they're looking for something, right? And so the best way to address our boys is by having folks that look like them, that can identify with them and identify with the struggle. If you do not have that at your capacity, then I would look to do what Dr. Miller's saying in terms of building the capacity of those others that are involved in their educational lives. And so this conversation is not to say that white folks can't come in and be just as impactful as folks that look like them. So please don't take it that way, because that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that if you are white, you have to be open to analyzing your lens in terms of being anti-racist. You also have to open up your lens in terms of understanding that these cultures that these kids come from are different than yours, and you can't view them through your white middle class lens.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dr. Manning. No, you got it.
You sure, brother? Oh, and I agree with you, Ray. Well, here in Buffalo, the situation is it's the latter, all right? So it is about conditioning non-Black teachers. So whether they're white or we have predominantly Black children, and you have a teacher that comes in that's not Black. That's a really common situation here in Buffalo. Okay, so it's less likely that I'm going to be able to get a 90% Black staff. More likely, I'm going to be conditioning the staff in order to really be able to meet and educate Black children. And it's meeting them where they are. And with my teachers, I push them. For the most of my career, I was the person in the building looked different from everybody. Okay, you said I was sitting in the middle of Central Asia or Bangladesh. I looked different from the moment I walked out of my front door. Everyone knew I was different. And I had to it was on me to reach these children, to graduate them, to form relationships. But I had to own the fact that I was different. I think sometimes people don't want to own that, or they want to ignore it. Or, how about I was a history teacher. I had to teach by the way, the invasion of Iraq is in history books, by the way, don't feel old. But I had to teach about that, 9/11. And I'm a man, I'm a Christian, I'm a military veteran, I'm American, right? And I'm teaching to a classroom full of Muslim young men and women. There was so much already said about me before I opened my mouth. I knew that, right? But I had to own that, swallow that discomfort and teach, right? But I also had to understand and acknowledge my connection to the story, right? I think that's sometimes a barrier too, right? We talk about white privilege, and it's something that is there, and systemic racism, but if you're tied to it and you're so afraid of your students looking at you and attaching you to the story, you'll start to cut a little bit away. You start to omit something to keep yourself comfortable. I don't allow that to happen. We have bold conversations in my school. We talk about it. Okay, did that make you uncomfortable? Great. Let's talk about it again. And let's do it again. And that's conditioning for them. And I level with them saying, all right, I've been different too. That's not an excuse. Let's do this the right way. Right. And I think having that bold, candid conversation is the best way. We do that during interviews as well. Just had an interview today. Right. And you ask the right questions and you make them get honest about it. And if they know that's the expectation, they're not going to try. And when they do, it's going to be checked.
Yeah, Dr. Manning, I think I really feel so much of what you're saying, and clearly, Brother Raymond, I agree with your perspective as well. I think fundamentally, what we are talking about here is how a person comes to this endeavor. If you believe your job is to be the jailer, the chief accountability officer, that you were there to keep them in check, to bring their wildness. We know all the terms that we hear people talk about. Even, let's be really real, our people, Black people have internalized racism and oppression in a deep way, in a powerful way. We replicate the same perspectives on our children that white people do. So this, again, let's keep it all the way 100. They need just as much training. My staff is 99% Black and brown, and they need the training just as much. And so part of it is, for at least the way we see it here, what do you believe your purpose is? What do you believe your purpose is when you come to this endeavor that we call schooling? So we've really fundamentally started, we don't even call it teaching anymore internally. We call it human development, because for us, that speaks more to the truth of what we're doing. And so, Sister Yomika, you asked about this, like, what are some of the things that we are doing to help bring the students forth, to help inspire them? Well, first, I focus on two things. One, purpose, and two, prosperity. And this, to me, is fundamentally an economic question. Whether it's an economic question in terms of your physical, financial resources, or whether or not it's an economic question in terms of your soul and your being. And I think as enterprises where we are engaged in the development of human beings, we have to speak to both. We need to empower our young people with an economic analysis that allows them to understand, well, what is the space and place I'm going to occupy in this world, given the way that it is, with this racism intact, with its oppression, with its disparities? What am I going to do? And that's a part of calling them to their purpose. What are you going to do for you and yours? And what are you going to do for everyone else? And I think without those things, what are we really doing? Are we kind of checking the box here, passing along these assessments, cashing a check? I didn't sign up for that. I know I didn't. I know these brothers didn't either. So if you're listening to this and you're watching this, what did you sign up for? If you came to this endeavor because you think that this is just a career, well, go teach suburbs someplace else. Don't come teach in my community. Don't come teach the young people who grew up like me, who suffered and continue to suffer under the trauma of generational poverty and racism. Don't bring that here, because we need you to be different. But if you're about that life, if you are about that purpose, well, then you can certainly come work. We help you get there. We will definitely help you get there.
Hey, I'm sorry to take over for you, Yomika, but Mr. Larkin, jump in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one thing that I see that I think there is opportunities for you to build your staff. I think it starts at the board, you know, creating those committees that's looking at equity, diversity, and inclusion, but looking at your human resource practice, look at the questions you're asking the staff. Oftentimes when I first got to where I was at, they were looking for everybody had to be certified. Everybody, it was certain stipulations they were putting out with excluding people that, so for me, I'd rather hire somebody that's able to build relationships and is coachable than just somebody that's just certified. Because certain things you can't teach. So for me, we looked at positions we had open and we were intentional about who we were interviewing, and you change the questions you're asking, and it has to start from the top down. But also it's not just bringing somebody in because they look like us, but once you get them there, like Brother Alik was saying, what are you doing to ensure that they stay there? So ensuring that you build a partnership with colleges to help them get their master degrees or their certifications, and providing that coaching so they can become certified and be successful. But there's always opportunities to bring on other people of color within your building, particularly at charter schools. That's why I like being at a charter school, because it lends you some autonomy to, have the students, and I'm talking from the top down, from CEO, leadership, the teachers, custodian, they should see somebody in everything that we do within the education system. Like I said, I'm a big athletic fan. I was a coach for years, but that's oftentimes what they just want to put on us. There's doctors, there's lawyers, there's chefs. Our school uniquely, we have a CTE program, career and technical education. Everybody may not want to go to college, but you can still make a lot of money as an entrepreneur or in all of these other pathways. But I think it's still intentional about who we're showing our young men. When you're talking about changing the narrative, you change the narrative by surrounding these young men with all different examples and showing them that they can be anything that they want to be.
All right, I'm going to jump back in here. I'm going to start off by saying Yomika Bennett, Executive Director, New York Charter School Association. Ray, I respect your prowess on that mic and that podcast, but this is my webinar right now. Truly appreciate you. And actually, I'm getting a little schooling here from what everybody's saying, but as well, Ray, and your expertise and conversing and doing the podcast. There is so much powerful discussion today. I wanted just to remind folks that we are scheduled to be here till 5 o'clock. We are at some point going to switch and have everybody come in and be able to ask questions. If you could put in the chat, if we need to know if we run over 5, 10, 15 minutes, are we good on that? Or do we need to do the hard stop? I don't want to cut off really engaging conversations, but I want to also ask this group to, if we can do this again, I really want to make sure that we do this again. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. The surface has only been scratched. But I want to continue sort of the line of this, I'll say, for lack of a better word, like the development. So right now we're talking about what can you do in schools for the teachers, for the teaching staff, for that environment. What about the students, right? What about, and I'll say students and young, right, and Black boys and young Black men, right? In our lives, we will see them, we will pass by them, we will raise them, right? And, as well as teach them, as well as see them socially and in our schools. I talked again about that narrative. If you had to write your own narrative, what would that be? And if you had, if you had to dismantle that narrative that I talked about, what would you do, again, now directed for young Black boys, and what would you encourage other people to do, right? What do we need to do? What's our work?
So, Yomika, I think the important thing is there's a power in healing. And I think our young Black men have went through a lot of trauma and continue to go through trauma from the neighborhoods that they live in, through the circumstances of racial injustice, from the things that are happening with the police on a daily basis. People are supposed to be protecting and serving us. And so there is so much trauma that goes on and occurs. And the biggest piece is going to be for our young men identifying who they are and then identifying what they need to individually heal, and being okay with being able to heal, and being okay with the power of healing, because there's a lot of power in that. And they have this power inside of themselves to be able to look at that. They have to actualize, they have to identify, they have to look and build up who they are and build that self-confidence within themselves to understand that they are so special and so much of an important being who has so much light to offer. But to offer that light is going to have to be to let that light inside of themselves and work on that healing. And a lot of times that healing comes from love, and that healing comes from self-love, and that healing comes from not being what they think or what they said you are, and being who you really are. And so that love and that self-love, and you might not always have it from a parent. They might not have it from a parent, but it might come from people on this panel, might come from the teachers. And I think as educators, that's really one of the first places where we need to start, is how you love on the kids. Of course, appropriately, but how do you love on the kids? How do you build relationships? How do you show them this affection, that you care about them and do what you say you're going to do, and be the person that is going the extra mile for them and showing up? So I think the love of healing, and that is what will take our young men to the next step, next level, is that healing.
Y'all don't be shy. Anybody can jump in here. I mean, he said some eloquent stuff, but this panel is super deep, so you guys could jump in.
Well, at our school, our motto is sharpen the mind, carve the path. And we talk about that a lot. We say it every day we get together, and our job is to sharpen their minds, but it's their job to carve their path. And we talk about why we said the word carve, because the path is not going to suddenly appear in front of you just because you graduate from school or just because you get a college degree. I mean, so it's like you have to carve your path. And I think and speaking to a lot of the brothers who already said, there's a lot we have to do to help a child be able to carve their path after school, wherever that might be. They may go to college, they might start a business, they may go into a vocation. At the end of the day, especially those of us with high schools, they're leaving us as adults. Some of them may have already started a family. Let's be realistic about it. What do we have to provide for them to make sure that they're going to be successful at life? And I believe relationships and trust is a big deal. I believe accountability is also a big deal, right? I think holding them accountable, having them start to establish goals for their lives right now, and holding them accountable to their decisions and how that impacts whether or not they're going to succeed at achieving that. So I just want to start with that. Sharpen the mind, carve the path. We always talk about helping our students understand that they're going to have to carve their own path. We're not going to be able to do it for them. We can educate them, right? We can give them a diploma, but at the end of the day, they're gone. Once we give them that high school diploma, there's not very much more we could do, right? And the university, in many ways, might not hold their hand. So I think a lot of the thoughts and conversations could be around what do we need to do with the kids while we have them? Because once they're 18, 19, and they're gone, what are they going to be able to do? And we have these precious years with them.
So I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to focus resources on when they leave us, right? And so tracking them when they're in college, because I think, you know, we put so much emphasis on getting them to college, but you know, a lot of times it's really easy for you to get to college and then drop out of school or whatever. And so like, what kind of resources are we putting into them in order to make sure that they're getting through all 4 years of school, right? Because it's really easy for us to point to that, you know, and hopefully I can point to that in a couple of years and say 100% of my scholars are going to college. But I would love to be able to say 4 years from there or 5 years from there that 100% of my founding class of scholars went and graduated from college as well. And so we know some things in life happen, but you know, we want to put some emphasis on that. And then also, and I won't take up too much time, just like using resources outside of the school. So for me, you know, I know for me coming up, I learned how to read in church, right? I had like pillars in my community that were, you know, Black women that taught Sunday school. And so I remember my Sunday school teacher was a special educator in the school district. And so the way that she used to break things down or whatever, like resonated for me when I was going through my teacher education program. I saw all those things in the church, and like there were things that were happening in my community that kind of kept me out of the streets. So during the summer, like I wasn't running up and down the street to the light went off or whatever, like most people was doing, because I was in vacation Bible school and I was doing other things in order to keep my mind, you know, against the summer learning loss. I was walking to the library, even though I grew up super poor. I still knew what a library was. I still knew that I needed to get a library card because I wanted to be competitive in like this so-called global market. Like I didn't want to walk into class and people know more than me. But, you know, that's more intrinsic, and we got to get our kids to a space to where they love themselves, they're healing themselves, and they're intrinsically motivated to want to be the best they could be.
Right. All right. With that, I think you dropped the mic before we transfer to the meeting portion. I'm going to ask Becky to let everyone in. Everyone come on in. We'll start asking some questions to the group and do the Q&A. And we'll just take a minute to do that.
Ray, I don't believe you. Got to give us a scripture real quick. You got to give us a scripture, prove that you went to Bible school. Go ahead.
John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. But you know,
okay, all right, bro.
That's the easy one. We all know that one.
Everyone's going to say Jesus wept.
The shortest prayer.
Right. All right. So as everyone's coming in here right now, I want to turn it over for a bit to Ashara to see if we have questions that are in the chat to start us off.
No specific question. I would say there are remarks around. So let's go back to the pipelines. How can we build on those pipelines? We're talking, you guys mentioned training teachers of non-color and, you know, exploring that dynamic. Let's explore the dynamic of appealing to educators of color. How can we build that pipeline?
Well, I definitely think that there's some avenues and opportunities. I've even went recruiting down in historically Black colleges, went and sat in their offices, tried to make some connections, establishments. But I'm going to be also, like I said, y'all want to keep it real. I will tell you that none of those colleges ever followed up, even when I followed up. So I will tell you that it's been frustrating. So, however, I do think that that's an avenue. And I do think that we should continue to try to break those barriers and look at places and recruit in the right places and open the doors for enrollment that way.
I would just add two things to that. So one, I would look to push through connecting with the career offices and go to the professors. We've had some success in building relationships directly with professors around certain majors, and then having an opportunity to really talk about how we see this work. So that's the one thing. And then I would say another is as people consider, you know, no one keeps one career or one job these days. And so thinking about how do we persuade people to switch career paths, right? To kind of, you know, they spent, you know, 3 or 4 years on one particular career path. How do they then bring those assets, those lived experiences, that expertise into teaching and to create those kind of entry paths? So I would say those are the other two places where we also look to recruit specifically Black and brown folks.
What I'm thinking about doing, and Paul, you kind of make me push me on this one. I want to go to my to Stony Brook. Stony Brook is the nearest school to me, and I'm gonna go to their EOP office, and I'm gonna create an internship, to where, you know, we got kids that are in their sophomore through senior years that may be majoring in history, maybe majoring in math, and for them to have the opportunity to come to our campus, paid internship, of course, in order for them to come and expose themselves to teaching. Maybe that'll push them to go into the profession. Dr. Miller, I think you should go to Albany into the ELP program there. I think that might work out.
Absolutely. I also, anytime I get a student teacher and they're of color, I've looked towards compensating them. They're not just student of color, but I've student teachers of color, but I look towards compensating them. But especially when I have a student teacher of color, and the last 2 student teachers of color I had, I created spots for them. So because I know that at some point in time, I was going to have other people who may leave. And so I was able to create spots and have them waiting in the wings because I knew that they would be trained through the way we want them trained, but also have the opportunity to have somebody who looks like the kids in front of them. So it was kind of some of the forward-thinking and trying to make sure that we planned ahead.
Yeah, you can definitely connect with your colleges, the seniors, and not even just education majors. And we always volunteer to host student teachers because you have the opportunity to interview and select who you want. So oftentimes you can see if they are people of color to provide. And like Dr. Miller said, if you see someone and you do have openings or you can create opportunity for them, I think that's one of the best ways. A lot of it is also word of mouth. As so many other businesses out there, there's a lot of people that have degrees and are thinking about a different career, or you meet parents that come in and you see them work well with the young men. You have, hey, what are you doing? What career are you doing? Have you thought about going into education? And so a lot of it is just speaking to some of your staff about who they know, or to send people your way. And also sharing, I'm not the only, it's another school in Rochester that's all boys school. So if I'm interviewing somebody and I got several candidates and I can only pick one, I'm going to take those resumes and send them to the other charter school and try to provide opportunity for them.
Can I just add to
that? I'm just going to jump in for a second, just add that, just off of the college interaction, all of the groups, right? The ASUBA at SUNY, all of the Black affinity groups for college that colleges have themselves, college students have themselves, are great opportunities to talk to college students directly, whatever major they're in, and speak one-on-one and tell them about charters and what they're all about.
I just want to add, your parents are another opportunity. We had so many who maybe started school, had to leave. And so we have a number of parents on our staff, and they may begin in one place on our staff, but we are helping them develop their own career path. So they want to end up as a mental health practitioner, they want to end up as a teaching practitioner. We want to empower them and then support them so that the longer they're with us, and then provide resources and support. Here in New York, it is really cost effective for them to be able to go back to school, especially with our support. And then on top of that, the online infrastructure that's available allows them to do that in the work. It may take some time, but I also think that is a very worthwhile investment.
So we have a question from Pablo. Pablo is asking, and I saw he posted it both in the chat and Q&A. what are some circles of support that one can turn to for the inevitable resistance? And he is a person of color, and he's found very few places where he's been supported in his growth and education.
Is he willing to move to Buffalo?
I'm about to say, come work for one of us. That's first step. That could, there you go. Start with that.
Pablo, put your LinkedIn.
That's right.
There it is. If you're
Drop that
serious about
resume
that,
right now.
if you're serious about that, come to Buffalo. I mean, I've been taking notes as everyone's been talking, because that is a huge struggle up here, trying to find teachers of color. And we were scheduled even to fly down to North Carolina to certain symposiums, but then that was right when coronavirus hit, so we weren't able to go to these conferences. And then the recruiting, I think they had special recruitment for teachers of color, but those are migrated online. And as a result, Buffalo is not the vacation spot people think about when they think about New York anyway. So you say New York, you get excited, then you say Buffalo, and things are quiet. I don't get responses to emails, things like that. So I'm not throwing any shade on Buffalo. I love it here. I'm raising my family here. But young people, I'm talking the young guys who are just out of college, they're not looking at Buffalo as the place to be, right? So I'm writing down everything you guys are talking about with strategies, because that's something we're really struggling with. And in terms of Pablo, seriously, if you're seriously finding resistance where you are, come to Buffalo. So put your contact information in the chat. We'll talk.
But I would also,
Dr. Menon, I think there may be a shift, because you got the almighty Griselda up there, man. I think that could be a ploy for you. You need to find out who those brothers are, and they could get people to come up there.
I would tell Pablo, mentoring, just even, like I said, I'm happy to be on this panel, but sometimes, put your information out there. Mentoring is super important, but there are some organizations of color that do support teachers at our school. We made a connection with Profound Gentlemen. They're out of North Carolina, and their goal is to ensure, that men of color stay in the education field, because they know that we lose a lot of them within the first 3 years. So I would tell you to look into them, but also just reach out to one of us or another administrator. Mentorship is free. Like you can always run, the good, the bad, and ugly, and get a perspective from somebody when you feel like you don't have that support there.
We had a question from Bridget. I think you guys spoke about this when you mentioned specific roles for Black men. So the dean, more mentorship roles. How do we improve the way we approach placing Black males into courses? So she believes that they're being placed below their actual ability.
Absolutely. So I think that it's happening way too often. And I think in our schools, it's about building in certain levers so that doesn't happen. So I know we force our students to come in and they have to take certain courses, and we don't give them that opportunity to opt out of it. So they're taking the AP courses, they're taking the chemistries, they're taking the physics, they're taking honors level courses. And also, through assessments, if we see that they are struggling, we don't put them in a lower course. We just give them additional support and additional help. So they're in a regular Regents level course. We just provide them with additional help. And so it's being very conscious. And so when you're scheduling them and you're creating them, it's not giving that opportunity. It's putting certain mandates in to make sure that they have to take these courses, and they will rise to these expectations. Now we have to meet them where they're at and pull them up to these expectations at times, but they will rise. But we got to believe that they can do it and not allowing them to falter. I'm just as a person on here, I'm not supposed to have doctor in front of my name. I used to be a phys ed teacher from the middle of the hood, and when I say that, there's nothing wrong with teaching phys ed, but that's the way that they looked at me. They didn't want me to run a school. There were white women that I worked for in the Rochester City School District that were very adamant that I should be just stuck managing students, that I should be just stuck being the dumb jock or a phys ed teacher, which again, I have all due respect for my phys ed teacher brothers out there. But what I'm saying is that we're so much more than that, and we have so much more ability. And it takes people pushing our kids and make sure that you guys are the advocates for change and don't allow those things to happen. You don't allow them to be put in those courses by even sometimes removing them off the schedules. So those are just some of my quick little tidbits.
I think for adults, it's nothing wrong with, I started off as a dean. I started off really young in administration. I learned a lot being a dean of students. And there's nothing wrong with athletic directors, but my point is that we have to think about the bigger picture. So when you're mentoring or talking to them, figuring out what their next step is. But also at charter schools, I think we have the ability. So if you do have a dean, you have the ability to give them some teachers to supervise. You may not start off with core, but you say, you know what, I'll have you supervise, you know, the computer science teacher. You still want to push them in the level, because as they grow, they're going to have to be instructional leaders. So just don't let them get comfortable where they at. It's just really always pushing them and providing them opportunities slowly but surely to get everything they need. Because in order to be successful, you have to be instructional, operational, management. You need it all. So there's nothing wrong with dean and athletics, because many of us were coaches and we had mentorship. But if you plan on moving to the next level, so really it's really finding out your employees what their why is and what their plans are, and really trying to put things in place through connections and networking to make sure they have what they need to move to the next level.
Yeah, but even with you saying that, and I'm 100% behind you, it's really easy to get pigeonholed and stuck in those positions of like dean of students, especially if you're really good at it. And like the weight that you carry from like being a dean of students, when you're you know the disciplinarian for like all of the school, especially if you're in a charter school, because some things may not really jive with your spirit. I remember being a dean of students at a high performing charter school that was zero tolerance when it was sexy to be zero tolerance. And yeah, it really didn't jive with me, but like it motivated me to go and start and do my own thing in terms of like building my own capacity to open up a school or to be a leader at a school. It pushed me to do that. But a lot of people don't, you know, they just leave education.
This is Yomika. Before, I'm sorry, I got to step out. But I just wanted to just speak to this last point. You know, like Dr. Miller said, we have one standard, but that standard is the same for adults and children alike. And that is we all rise. Everyone does. We have this expectations that students, our young people, will learn and master something new all the time. How can we not bring that same approach to our own lives as practitioners and as adults? And I think if this is the culture that we nurture and cultivate in our schools, that's going to be the environment. That's what our students will see. And that's what every adult who encounters us in our spaces and places, and that's what they'll feel. It's been an honor. I'm looking forward to part 2, family. Sister Yomika, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll hold you to it. Thank you, sir.
I wanted to comment on that in terms of pipeline. I think another pipeline that's missing is just having more leaders like us. I mean, we were part of a very small group, which, I mean, it's nice to see everybody, but I mean, it shouldn't be this small. It shouldn't be, you know, I don't want someone looking at me like I'm unique. I'm not unique. Many people who grew up with me could be doing the exact same thing. It's just the situation just made it to where only a few of us were able to make it out. And accepting that, first off, is that, one, I'm not special. Okay, there are a lot of people, bone to the bone, flesh to the flesh, just like me, that could be doing the exact same thing. It's just a lot of the opportunities aren't there. I came to Charter World through BES, which is a charter, which is a pipeline. I mean, it's a, you guys may not know what BES is, but it was a fellowship where they paid money. I traveled all around the country studying high performance charter schools while I was writing the charter, designing the school, and I had executive coaches, governance coaches. It was an amazing program, and so many brothers and sisters have been through that program and opened their own schools in New York City, one of the biggest charter school networks, Democracy Prep, right? That was a BES fellow. There are a number of them that were started by BES fellows. I think those type of initiatives are important too, because you can have a lot more people opening schools. I mean, and I think you'd have a lot more young people of color willing to go work in schools, and they see a lot more people like us sitting in the positions we're sitting in, and we're not just a part of this small group. If there's more people of color leading schools, opening schools, you might have more young people of color willing to go into teaching, because they don't have to worry about if I have a bad day, if someone can do the benefit of the doubt. They, you know, some things they can accept on face value, that they'll be accepted as a professional just by seeing someone who looks like them in an executive position. And I think it's a quick path to executive leadership by opening the school. That's a path that some people could take, as opposed to joining a school and hoping that you can rise your way up. And there are charters. There are many charters left here in New York State, right? And we have authorizers whose jobs are to adjudicate and approve charters. So I'd say also identifying those people that you see that are awesome, that can work and have the potential, and pushing them into those type of pipelines. Let's get some more schools opened by Black men and women. I think that would also help get some more people of color coming to the school. And if you have a question about BES, let me know.
well, if you're trying to open up a school, I recommend the Board of Regents as your authorizer. Shout out David Frank.
We are nonpartisan. We love all the authorizers.
Guys, can I ask a question from the audience?
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
that okay?
Yep. Hi.
I don't know, have you guys heard of, I know some talk, I think during the summer, about an initiative to start some sort of AP program, to AP. By the way, I'm sorry, my name is Joseph. I'm taught high school math for about 12 years, and now I'm a data analyst for a small charter network. I got out of the classroom and did data. I'm also a career changer, so I started out in IT and just kind of migrated over. So one thing is that until I got into education, I didn't know principals made the kind of salary they made. So I think that some of the young people know that principals don't have a bad life, you know. But in terms of AP classes, at one point there was talk about having African-American AP classes. Have you guys heard anything about that? The designing an AP class that's centered on African-American history?
So I haven't heard of it. I don't know if any of the panelists have any of them.
I haven't heard of it, but I would tell you, I'm not the biggest fan of AP in general. You know, I think they're there because, you know, society says that they're the standard, but I don't think they make a mark of a good college student. I think as a school, it's our due diligence to put those programs in, whether it's AP or not. So like we have a social justice course. We've had college level Black history. Where we've actually partnered with other, with I believe University of Albany to offer college level credit for it. So it's putting those programs in your schools and making sure that they're relevant, but also your pedagogy is culturally relevant all throughout in all of the classes, and not just having a course that's dedicated to it. So it's making sure that that happens as well. So that would be my best answer, because I'm not aware of an AP course for it.
I guess it wasn't something that was established, I guess, during the whole be it Black Lives Matter movement. There were, you know, young people advocating for it at their schools, at their high schools across the country, to you know, include African American history as part of the AP canon.
So I'm not sure. It probably will never be an AP course. However, there's a partnership with Syracuse University that has a intro level African American studies course that students can take in order to get 3 college credits through Syracuse University. So that might be an avenue.
There are some courses, they're just not AP courses that they do have under the social studies curriculum. But I agree with Dr. Miller. I've never been a big fan of AP. I prefer actually dual credit, where you work with the colleges, where the students are getting their high school and college credit by completing the course.
But you guys have AP at your schools though, right?
Well, we do have AP, and we have AP because often college, the strength of schedules dictates the how easily you're admitted into a college. And so AP does look strong on college schedules. However, again, in most cases, AP is not really real world, is not really applying them. The dual college credits have made so much more sense with, and then what happens is our kids end up being taken off some of the debt as well. Because most of our kids, when they're in the AP courses, they don't pass the AP exams. So they'll pass the course and they don't necessarily get the 3 or 4 they need on the exam, but they'll pass the college course, get the college credit, and then be able to eliminate some of the debt that comes with it. So there's times that kids walk out of high school with 30 college credits that are transferring depending on which schools that they're going to. And that is so much more sound than the AP courses. They have little to no value to me, except for getting admitted into certain schools.
But they're also looking, you also get CTE credentials that's just as important as the AP, along with work-based learning credits are now just as highly looked at colleges. So there is other alternatives to just AP courses in schools.
I'm going to jump in and ask a question about CTE programs and get your thoughts on what we can do, you know, your thoughts about the program in general, expansion. What are your thoughts on that? Do we need more of them? Do we need to redirect them? Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm a huge fan because prior to coming to UPrep, we were the only charter school in Rochester with CTE, but I was the principal at Edison, which is one of the biggest CTE schools in New York. And I went there too. So although I did nothing with it, but I am a big fan of CTE because it provides alternatives. Like I said, everybody doesn't have a desire to go to college, but there's all type of careers and pathways where you can be very successful and earn a good living for your family. And I think the thing with CTE, you always have to stay on top of it. You always have to look at industry trends because what might have been the career aspirations 10 years ago is not what's going on now. Like we talked about it earlier, right now it's green economy, it's nanotech, it's IT, it's media, it's health sciences. So you have to stay on top of it. You don't just want kids taking it just to get credits. You really have to be intentional about what you're providing the students. So when they do leave, that they're able to find a career.
I'm also a big fan of CTE. Now, we have built a construction tech lab, a full service barbershop, and a music production studio, which we're not currently CTE aligned because we don't have the CTE teacher and some of the other requirements. But what we do have are programs that are building through internships and community partners that are leading kids with long-term skills to be able to go out into the career world on top of being college ready. So at some point in time, I would seriously consider the CTE alignment if we can find and meet the necessary requirements. But until then, I think that vocational skills are so poignant and purposeful. For example, like we have a construction tech program and it's connected to our entrepreneurship program where we have students who are they're buying land, they're in the process of building a house on the land, and then they're going to sell the house on the land. And the construction tech lab is teaching them the skills on it. And so, you know, it's been a little halted because of COVID, but these are the pieces, those additional holistic, comprehensive pieces that educate the whole child.
I'm a huge fan of CTE. First off, Dr. Miller, I have to come to your school. It's amazing stuff you're talking about there.
Thank you. Always welcome.
I'm definitely gonna come up there. But the you know, my brain was not, when I was leaving high school, I couldn't have just left high school and went to a college campus walking around for 4 years. I would have been miserable. I mean, I did college while I was in the military. So my homework, I was in Humvees and helicopters, okay? But I was balancing doing my work in the military and during college. I needed that. I needed work. I've been working 2 jobs since I was 15. I couldn't have just left that and went to college. It's just something that wasn't, I wouldn't have went to college if I had to just sit there in the classroom and go from class to class again. I was tired of that, right? So, and there are a lot of people that are the same way. So I think CTE allows an outlet for people who really want to still do something and make some money, right? So I think it's an amazing thing. And I'm interested in learning more about Dr. Miller's program because even without CTE, you can still create a vocational option for students.
And it's easy to get certified. We'll have to talk, Dr. Miller, because you probably just turning your paperwork in, listening to what you're saying. It's not as hard to get your program certified, and then you can add those additional credentials for your students.
I'll hit you up.
I wish I had known about taking advantage of BOCES programs when I was in high school, because I would have never went to college. I would have been some kind of hands-on person, and I still would have made 6 figures a whole heck of a lot earlier than what I did in my professional career, and I would have no college debt. So, Mr. Biden, if you're hearing this, cancel that.
Right.
I don't know what happened, but here in New York, they had, vocational and technical high schools. I went to George Westinghouse Vocational and Technical High Schools. And a lot of guys I went to high school with, when they left, they went straight to the MTA and they got their years in dental, jewelry, electrician, everything except plumbing. And then they cut it out and they went all academic. Now they're shifting back under the guys under CTE. So it's an excellent thing. It's an excellent thing.
It definitely was a big deal in New York City. I remember we would get this big book that looked like the old white pages, and it had tons of school, New York City from Brooklyn all the way to Staten Island. And it was exciting when you're in, middle school to look through that book. I have a cousin who literally just retired from MTA because he's only like 40 years old because he went to Transit High School back in the day, so those vocational schools is good.
100% agree. Fun fact, when I left government, I started a home improvement company and did just that. Found some young men like my own son for whom college was not his jam, as they say, right? And kids who were, who were otherwise sort of considered themselves and considered by others, not ready for the real world of work, leaned in, and many of the company I started went on to other areas and will send information back and say, we're doing this here now as my own business, which is exactly what you want to happen. So big fan, big fan. I'm going to open it up for last minute comments from our panelists. Then we're going to wrap. We're at 5:20. Thank you everyone so far who stayed with us. I hope you find this very, very informative. We will do it again, but I want to go around now and ask our panelists for any parting comments. We'll start with you, Dr. Miller.
Oh, okay. All right. Put me on the spot. So I would just tell people who are on this call that if you're working with our kids, if you're working with our boys, you got to know your why. So, figure out your why, remember your why, and don't let that why go. If you are not in this for the right reasons, I think it was said earlier, then you really need to do something else. You got to have the heart for this, and our boys, our kids deserve it. Our kids deserve people who will go the extra mile when no one else will. And so that would be my parting words. Know your why.
Thank you. Dr. Manning.
When you're educating Black children, you're educating for healing and justice as much as you're educating for them to be successful. And if you're looking at those people who work in careers of justice, it requires discomfort if you really want to bring justice. It also requires discomfort if you really want to bring healing. The teaching profession is a choice profession. So you've chosen to come into this profession, and most likely you chose to join the school. You joined that, and if that school happens to have majority Black children, boys and girls, then it's incumbent upon you to get yourself confident enough to be able to reach the children. I'm just humbled to be on this panel. I'm the new guy here, so I am going to be calling up each individual panel person so I can learn some more from them to make sure that we're successful here in Buffalo. So thanks for having me, Yomika.
Thank you. Mr. Larkin.
I appreciate this too. I think we need to start a Black network of CEOs for charter schools so we can continue to build each other up. But for me, relationships and mentoring is so important, and it's helped me throughout my career. So I feel like even just every man that's on here, man of color, you take the time to reach out to one younger man or older man, you can be that difference in their life. So that's always been important to me, whether it's counseling, it's a job, getting them enrolled in school, just anything you can do. And it's a great feeling because you don't expect anything back. So my encouragement is, let's continue to build each other up and provide opportunities for each other.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ankrum, sir.
You were gonna forget about me?
No, I see you. You already unmuted yourself. You ready for this? This is your world. I'm a squirrel trying to get a nut in this world. That's all.
So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna defer to the speaker because you did an amazing job with putting this panel together, and you facilitated it and you did your thing. So shout out to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ankrum. Thank you, Ray. I want to say back at you to all of you. Thank you very much. The folks don't know this, but I put out the call, and these gentlemen.
Coisas ao mesmo tempo. Deixa eu anotar.
Put out the call, and everybody responded almost on a dime, and I thank you. And it's really been better than I could even imagine. And I know that the emails are going to come. Thank you, thank you, thank you. They're in the chat now. We'll get them in text, we'll get them in email, and the first thing people will say is, when will we do this again? And so I extend to you right now, if we can do this again in June, as people are wrapping up the school year, thinking about the summer, thinking about you, Ray, and your trips to the library, and as a young age, thinking about learning loss, but also following up on the great work you're doing and follow up on this great conversation. Yes, yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for joining, for staying on. We'll see you next time. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right.